Thank you for the introduction. Good morning and welcome to the second round and last round, right, of our panel discussion with the topic re-engineering the cyberverse in the new norm. Cyberverse. I feel like we're in Cybertron. Are you familiar? Obviously, our beloved ISOG president, Tito Archie Tolentino, hi Tito, came up with this topic, and obviously he's a very big fan of Transformers. So yeah, all right. The pandemic has created a huge tectonic shift on global economies that has forced corporations and governments to scramble for survival, to hang on for dear life, literally, and try to stay afloat. That same shift actually happened on our global cyberspace, with the attack surface increasing by so many folds for cyber criminals. They're taking advantage of the explosion of the mobile workforce, the work from home users with very low home security in their networks. And they're also taking advantage of the lack of IT and security teams currently in the pandemic. So today, I will be asking some tough questions to our panelists, and they will share with us their insights on how the survivors were able to survive the new cyber threats, and also what to watch out for or look forward in the coming years. Okay, let's start off with the questions. I'd like to start our first question and direct it to our commissioner, Sir Raymund. The first question is, if you were to rebuild or re-engineer the security posture of a company in the new norm, what would be your first priority and how would you accomplish this?
Yes,
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you for that question, Dan. Again, a pleasant good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our panelists. Thank you again for inviting me. As to your question, companies must really be tactical and strategic, and they're trying to maintain first their, of course, their business continuity. Tactically, you're talking about how to execute remote or work from home arrangements that are secure, and and tactically is how to secure your frontline services to your customers. And strategically, it's really now about thinking ahead of how digitalization would have the greatest impact on your organization. And again, securing this entire environment. At the end of the day, tactically and strategically, you have to be trusted by your employees. You have to be trusted by your customers. So here, I think information officers, information security officers, and data protection officers would play a very strategic role in positioning their companies, in responding to customer needs, in responding to expectations by their workforce, and looking ahead and being strategic to ensure company survival and continuity in the future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So what I got from them is you have to think both tactically and strategically, and with the right planning, of course. Sir Alex, I'd like to point the same question to you. What are your thoughts?
So the same with Sir Raymond's answer. First thing that companies need to do is to make sure that they have business continuity. They need to understand that currently attacks are imminent. The attack will come, and how you will recover from this attack is very important for your business and for your clients as well. And in order to prevent the attacks, you need to first of all think what are all the points where you expose yourself to the world, and what are your attack points where the attack can come to you. And for this, securing all your web applications, cloud assets, and the digitalization is synonym to cloud transition or transition to cloud. So this is a very important thing that companies need to understand. And work from home is a new challenge. Most of companies don't understand how to protect themselves from a situation where our employees are using the same devices for work and for play. So this is something that companies need to understand and adjust very fast. Companies which will not be able to adjust in time will just get the ransom, and after a while they all or will cease to exist or overcome a major breach.
All right. Thank you, Alex. So for Alex, it's prioritization of disaster recovery or business continuity and the securing of the home workforce or work from home users. That's right. Steve, can I get your input on this?
I like this question. If I get to re-engineer a company from the ground up, lots of things come to mind. Maybe we should make the infrastructure zero trust, or maybe we can align to cloud first, or maybe we can, heavily build with automation in mind. But instead of aligning to one of those buzzwords, I think I'm going to take a different approach. I'm going to say that the first priority should be to have a culture of cybersecurity driven down from executive leadership. We see in lots of organizations hesitancy to admit the gaps that they might have, and that of course is a roadblock to them improving and closing those gaps. Let me give you some examples. First, let me say what I think companies are doing well in this regard, and that would be maybe bug bounties, right? Where if someone on the outside can find a problem and notify us about it with some financial compensation.
Yes.
On the flip side of that, I think that's good externally. We need that same mindset internally. So we see lots of assessments where organizations might be hesitant to do an assessment because they might be afraid of what they'll find. Right. They might be afraid of how how that will reflect on the work they've put in the past few years. And we see this at executives levels, sometimes hesitant to do tabletop exercises and role plays, and on technical assessments where sometimes the tech teams feel like they're being tested rather than going through an exercise of building muscle. And they see it more of a pass fail than a learning exercise. So I think we need to keep in mind that culture of security and importance, and that really has to be driven down from executive leadership. That's the first priority I would put in place.
Thank you, Steve. That is a very interesting answer, and I do agree with you and Sir Raymund earlier. It's about culture, change of culture, and about awareness within the company, and focus on the security team. Okay, I'll move on to Garen. Hi, Garen.
Hello, hi everyone. Yeah, so I really like Steve's question, right? Driven down from the executives. I think that's really a good point down there, right? So when it comes to the first priority on what can be accomplished, right? I'm just thinking in the new norm, right? Companies are developing more and more user-friendly digital services. Like for instance, in Singapore, the government is building apps like Trace Together to be able to track the nation's movement more effectively and accurately, so as to combat COVID issues. So if I were to really rebuild and re-engineer the
strategy that will prevent and avoid getting compromised. But with the new norm, where majority of the employees are working remotely and where digital transformation is already happening, depending on the prevention strategy, organizations should start putting investments and resources to build a resilient cybersecurity framework that does not only prevent, anticipate and prepare for the breach. Others calls it early modern ransomware, with the objective of detecting and responding to breach at the possible time to reduce the impact. Now, given this, we need to extend further solution from preventive framework, detective and response, but to multi-layers in the network and not just focusing solely on endpoint. Putting it together and be able to correlate so you can filter all the detections and be able to focus and respond to the urgent and critical ones. And this is what the industry called the XDR. And I believe we have this, the companies should have and should look into this in addressing the current norms.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. There were some portions that your mic was cut off, although I can get the gist of your message.
Okay.
All right, but perhaps you can check your mic before we proceed, Ian.
How about this one? Is this better?
Yeah, we'll see later on if we don't
Okay.
get
Thank you, Dan.
the missing spots. Okay. Last but not the least, Sam, for the same
Thank
question.
you, Dan. I think if we talk about the new norm, we're seeing cyber ransomware attacks every 11 seconds right now. Remote workers are exploding. The adaptation to a hybrid environment is growing. All of these things, in addition to everybody else's comments before. The very first thing I think a company must have is the ability to visualize what's happening through its environment. The lack of visibility into flow and data makes it implementing and maintaining rules really, really hard.
Yes.
So as well as it makes preventing lateral movement really complicated, it's crucial for companies to understand that visibility is the first step to achieving a zero trust posture.
That's correct. Thank you, Sam. So, all right, I'll move on to the next question. Coming from your respective fields of expertise in the industry, and based on what you picture will be the cybersecurity landscape in 2022, what do you think companies should take more seriously in the coming years as far as cybersecurity is concerned? So, Sir Mon, I'd like to drive the question first to you.
Well, thank you, Dan. Coming from a data privacy regulator's perspective, I urge companies to focus not only, of course, on information security, but also their data protection and privacy strategies. People are now keeping a closer attention on how companies protect their personal data. Cybersecurity, information security is definitely a means towards that end. You can adopt the most robust security features, but when you do not adhere to the lawful, fair, legal, and ethical use of personal data, for example, or when you disregard data privacy altogether, you will never get the trust of the people you need at this point. When you are not being trusted, people will not bother to use your products or services. I'm talking here of the very basic approach because there has been a tendency now to do shortcuts, or even some during the start, for example, I was almost invited to a funeral march of data protection officers because they said that they were about to lose their jobs because their companies are cutting down on costs. Now more than ever, progressive companies must consider that they need information security and data protection officers now more than ever. And in the past few months, it has been proven again as people become more aware, become more sensitive, and they become more insistent of their rights. Citizens will assert their rights, and they will demand that their data will be protected. So if you are a company that isn't up to it, then it's a big chance of potential that you will be losing. So 2022 will further accelerate the digitization boom that we're seeing now. And you can only take advantage of this trend if you offer, a 360-degree view or 360-degree offering of security and data protection. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, sir. So there you have it, folks, from the commissioner himself. Please do not, please do not remove your data privacy officers, okay? Steve, your thoughts on the question, please.
Yeah, I think if we want to try and predict the future, maybe we need to look at the recent past, right? And maybe extrapolate from that. Right. So in the recent past, we've seen supply chain attacks escalate. Probably everyone's familiar with the SolarWinds attack that happened December of last year and all the impact, congressional hearings and fallout of that attack. That was just one of 38 supply chain compromises that Mandiant examined in the last 2 years. I just noticed 2 days ago, the MIT Review published an article saying that 2021 has set the records for 0 days caught in the wild. That's more than double of 2020. And so we're seeing sophistication continue to grow. And I think I'll build on what Ian mentioned earlier around resilience and that, prevention is very important, but inevitably that prevention will fail and you'll eventually have an intrusion and you need to be resilient to that intrusion. And that's a separate capability than prevention. And there's all sorts of detection and response technologies from EDR to NDR to XDR and so on. Maybe the last point I would add is when you're looking at that second half, that detection and response half, just keep in mind that it's a little bit different than the prevention piece. A lot of the prevention technology like antivirus and firewall is largely set and forget. But the detection and response tools are often investigation tools and someone needs to pilot them. And so anytime you're looking at those technologies, you should be thinking, where's the expertise going to come to drive this investigation? So there's a human element to that as well. So I think, to just summarize it, I'd say, ahead, we're looking at probably more sophisticated attacks, probably looking at more intrusions, and we need both the technology as well as the analysts to be able to mitigate those.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. So for you, it's really a game of speed of detection and speed of response and recovery.
Yeah, I often say the problem isn't that companies get breached. The problem is that companies get breached and don't notice.
Yes.
And so it's really important, if you notice quickly enough, getting breached isn't the end game. Getting breached is actually just the chess opening. And there's still a lot of work for the attackers to do. If you catch that breach early enough, you can intercept the attacker and stop them before they can impact the business.
I agree. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, let's go to Garen.
Yeah, hi. So I think companies should take more seriously in the coming years as far as cybersecurity is concerned, probably on the topic of data security, right? That's my thought, right? Because I'm just thinking that data is our crown jewel, right? And a lot of organization has got very sensitive data, right? And they usually reside in critical databases. Right. So I'm thinking of we need to ensure that the access of the sensitive data collected with all these digital services are not being abused. Right. And there is a lot of trend now going towards cloud, and the cloud adoption is increasingly common in today's context for agile development. Right. Because it makes it even more challenging for C-levels to have the single pane of glass across all the data access and protection, no matter where it is, on premise, in their data center, or in the cloud environment, right? So with that, thus bring us back to basics, right? On like who, what, where, when, how data is being used or accessed, right? So it's a difficult thing to do, right? But data protection being a very important part of the process itself, involves several stuff like discovery and classification, because you need to know where the sensitive data are and classify them accordingly to sensitivity, so that you know how to where they are and how to protect them, right? So so that you can perform auditing, security policies, and even protection and remediation once there is a certain excessive downloads, and things like that. So really reducing the surface area of attacks by minimizing data collection, data retention, data access, and data downloads, right? So it all evolves around data security, which I thought is we should take it more seriously.
All right. Thank you, Garen. I think our commissioner will very agree with you on that. The data is the crown jewel of any company. Yeah.
Yeah.
So going to Alvin.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Alvin.
Yeah, so I agree a lot with what Steve said. We all need to be more resilient. I think if there's any innovation that we need in cybersecurity, it is probably one of speed. And I call out speed because if you think about it, right, we can Google the internet for anything and the answer comes back in seconds. If I were to ask you what applications do you run, or do you run SolarWinds, or do you run Kaseya as an example, how long will it take for you to know exactly how many copies are out there in your environment and what versions are you running? And I find that many customers that I speak to, they do not know, and it will take them weeks. And in trying to know, right, in security, we always say, hey, let's bring the data back to your data lake. It used to be to your log server, but now it's to your data lake. Wherever it might be, the issue is that whatever data you bring back tends to be a bit too late. It's old data. It's going to be 1 week old, 1 day old even. And last night's data isn't good enough for the current situation because we might already have patched the situation, patched the server, or we might have deleted the software, for example. So we need to inject speed into what we do. The speed will give us a heightened sense of situational awareness. And that heightened sense of situational awareness will guide our business decision. I think that's very, very important as an innovation that we need in the cybersecurity world now.
All right. Thank you, Alvin.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's go to Alex. Hi, Alex. Yeah.
I totally agree with Sir Alvin regarding the speed, and speed is automation. Automation, but fast automation, and the addition of AI. Now, why do we speak about speed and automation? Because we understand that our opponents, the bad guys, are using automation in order to do all their attacks. Once a 0-day comes out, it takes 7 hours to 12 hours until they find out exactly where your organization is exposed. They weaponize the 0-day and use it. So automation is an essence. Going back to what our company does, the red team and the continuous red teaming on companies, we know that our key factor in hacking a company is using and utilizing these 0 days that come every day with dozens, and most companies don't have all the assets covered and visible. Going back again to what Sir Alvin said, you don't have an inventory of your assets, you don't have visibility of where you can be hacked, and this is why you're going to be breached. So keeping a continuous automatic inventory with AI to prioritize what is the most important thing that you need to attend to today is a critical thing. The biggest problem still remains after you have the automation and after you have this AI that does the prioritization, you're still lacking the skill and the manpower to really apply the patching fast enough. The reason why organizations are still getting hacked, although they have the best controls in the world, is because the cycle of finding the vulnerability, finding the risk is very fast, but until they remediate it, it takes a lot of time. So reducing this time from detection until mitigation, it's one of the key factors that we need to concern about.
Thank you, Alex. So for you, it's really risk-based approach to deciding which controls to put up in the company. All right. Sir Sam?
Thank you, Dan. I think in addition to everyone, because everybody's comments have been fantastic, it's, I take all the aspects of that and try to just summarize a little bit more on top of that. But I would have to, again, say automation, which has already been mentioned. I need to data and understand, identify your sensitive data, which has also been mentioned. And if we go through what everybody's saying, you can almost start to go through the Forrester Zero Trust Guide. So a lot of organizations going into 2022 need to start approaching on that, because it's important to have the parts of automation coming in. The new norm is forcing us to do that, to be able to automate and orchestrate. Back to Alex's point, to be able to get that detection correctly and quickly. These are the things that we need to bring in, because, if we look at the numbers today, it's $6 trillion by the end of 2021 in cybercrime. They're after our data. They're going to continue to go after our data. It's predicted to be $10 trillion by 2025. So organizations need to get in there and really shut down that opportunity. They are getting smarter. They are getting better. As Alex and the others have said, they're using the tools that we're using. They're not, but they are picking their spots and they're picking their timelines. So yes, I agree with everybody on the panel and emphasize more around the automation as well.
Thank you, Sam. Cyber criminals appear to be always 1 or 2 steps ahead of us, right?
Sometimes we also can be 1 step ahead of them, right? So that's the whole idea.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Okay, we'll go back to Ian. I hope you've already
Thanks, Dan.
taken care of your dogs.
We'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's our neighbors. But anyway, I just would like to agree with everyone here and even Sam. I think the word I would like to, I remembered is the word automation, And I think for next year, I think a lot of companies should look into security consolidation. The days where silos deployment of security solutions are effective. Because, when we did that, or the companies did that, it's having a broader range of information that you can access through different vendors and give you different perspectives of what is happening. But the new norm that this pandemic has created, where big numbers of employees working remotely, accessing emails and connecting to network from everywhere, companies should be able to provide a security posture that will provide better visibility and be able to do faster response to the most critical and urgent ones. And you can only do that if your security solution can be seen not just in a single pace, but also can correlate and provide you meaningful data analysis. Security solution consolidation is the key to achieve all this. Being able to correlate and give you better analysis is more important nowadays.
All right. Thank you, Ian. So for you, it's a single pane of view for the security risk managers. All right.
And correlation.
And correlation. Got it. All right. We can move to our third question. The third question is, how do you think companies today should measure the effectiveness of their controls amidst the explosion of the work from home mobile force, for example, and the ransomware threats in the new norm? Okay, I'll direct this question first to Garen.
Yeah. This is a tough one, right? So, I mean, effective measurement of security controls is really a tough job, right? And, in order to achieve that, I thought, right, a certain audit and compliance guideline or standard must be followed for a certain type of effective measurement, right? But of course, compliance is definitely not an easy task, right? So there are many compliance standards out there, PCI for FSI, HIPAA for healthcare, even in Singapore, we have something called PSDSRC, Public Sector Data Security Review Committee for Singapore government. There's many standards out there, right? I'm sure Philippines has one as well, right? So, going back to the topic that I mentioned just now about data, right? So, Sir Raymund has mentioned about the importance of the data, right? So I thought that with the compliance wise, it really goes down to, having an effective, data security solution that probably will help the companies to audit all the access to the sensitive data and protect them, becomes a mandatory part of a deployment, right? So, and of course, compliance is just a guideline, right? But when it comes to companies really following them, all companies have their own particular use case, right? So it becomes very use case driven, right? For instance, like maybe limit the volume of data access, monitor authorized and privileged access itself, right? And just now was there's a gentleman mentioning about usage of machine learning and AI tool to help day-to-day operation, serving out suspicious access with high accuracy so that we can focus and action on the important critical alerts and protection against ransomware threats more effectively, right? So it's a tough one, right? So, but I think compliance and audit standards are the way to go to measure it more effectively.
All right, thank you, Garen. I have a follow-up question to this. This is my favorite question actually in this panel, but I'll go back. To you in that. Sir Raymund, your thoughts on the question?
Dan, I think the true measure of how effective any control, security control, is when you're able to prevent information or security and privacy disasters from happening.
Okay.
Every control measure must have an aim of preventing disasters. And I take off from what Steve mentioned earlier. Resilience is really the foundation of preventing disasters. And this formula goes not only in data and information security. This formula of preventing disasters through resilience is basically the formula even in dealing with natural disasters, the way you deal with volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and flooding. And incidentally, in this part of the world, here in Asia, in the ASEAN most especially, right? That's why the clarion call really here is to build resilience, because that's how the peoples of this region were able to cope with all these threats and risks. So I would say, what is resilience all about, Steve? It's really about resilience is a disaster that did not happen. It's a disaster that did not happen. So that means that if you were able to prevent an incident or a security event even from turning into a disaster, then you have achieved resilience. Yes, you have achieved resilience, and your measure of control is effective. But as you mentioned earlier, and you already mentioned about ransomware, this will happen, and we've seen a marked increase in social engineering ploys, and we will expect that to go further rise in the coming months. So the more that companies, the firm level accountability, compliance, and the practice of ethics and building company resilience is very important. Our statistics alone here in the country, let me share this to you. With breach notification done, we had 184 breach notifications so far. 49% were caused by malicious actors. Many of these are ransomware attacks. 51%, as mentioned, Alvin, these are within our control. You talk about digital hygiene, you talk about human error. Focus on the things that we can control, and that's how you build resilience. Let's focus on the 51%, of course, but 49%, you have all your privacy enhancing information security technologies that we have put in place. But you have to look at it now comprehensively. Because right now, what we're seeing in the work from home arrangement, for example, is a tendency of employees, for example, to bypass controls for the sake of getting things done, right? So how do you now? And let me just answer this now in a very comprehensive way. Really, the clear voice from the top, as you mentioned, Steve, right? Top management and clear voice from the top to set the direction, to set the new mindset is very important. We have to communicate to our employees the importance that their own hygiene is not only for their personal safety, but really to save the company, so that to save everyone else in this pandemic, meaning so that they can sustain the business. We have seen so many reports of ransomware from BPOs to banks. This consultant me was trying to look at it. And really, it's another pandemic. It's a silent pandemic that's running parallel with the current COVID-19, right? So we have to really join hands in putting our stuff in really trying to prevent this particular pandemic. And it is really, it's a silent pandemic because nobody's admitting that they were victimized, right? But I would suppose even in our small circle here, our companies, probably have been victimized one way or another. So, moving forward again, this is a whole of organization, firm level accountability, compliance, and the building of resilience. Second, a clear voice again from the top that really sets the tone and the mindset of the organization. But work from home arrangement, right? We have to all be joining hands in preventing the company from being victimized or to prevent security incidents and events that could turn into disasters. So and lastly, and I guess I just would like to emphasize again the role of our information security officers and data protection officers, because right now at this point you have, as I mentioned, these role players in the organization used to be role players, but they should now really be the stellar role now in companies and in corporations. Why? Because not only do they have to watch out for new cybersecurity threats, they have to test new, I think, security measures. I mean, all of us here probably have new products. You have to test it if you actually stand and test it in their own environment quickly, so that to see if they can, it will increase their security posture. And lastly, I think why I think that the role now of CISO and information security officers is very, very critical is that they have to advise management to be able to balance now between the needs, the tactical needs of the company, right, and making sure that there's business continuity. So, for example, a lot of we have seen this in industry, for example, that the BPO, I mean, they have shifted overnight from work from home, from their posh buildings here in Makati, and that they have shifted now to their homes, right? It really offered a new environment for threats, and of course, every day they have to assess what are the new threats that are coming out, and coming up with solutions. That's why, as a national privacy commission, let me tell everyone this: we know our role in during this time, not only as a protector but as an enabler. So what we have told them is that what solutions do we have? Let's see, let's assess on how we can mitigate and balance the rights of your workers in monitoring their workplace. At the same time, making sure that the company forges ahead with the business. So it will be, I guess, it's for us to embrace our new roles, and as a privacy commissioner, as a privacy office, we have embraced our new role really as an enabler, not as a gatekeeper of what things can or cannot be done. At the same time, again, Dan, you have to fortify your ranks, because you will be relied upon by management to make certain calls, to recommend certain calls on how to deal with day-to-day, again, threats that are coming up, and how to deal with, again, strategic, how to balance now business continuity with the security and the data protection, and really build resilience to prevent disasters from happening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's very, very insightful. I love how you describe ransomware as a silent pandemic, because it truly is. It's happening today. All right, Alex, your thoughts on the question, please.
For me, this question is the easiest question. Although it's the toughest question, for me it's the easiest, and I'll explain why. Because this is what we do every day. We test, and testing is the only solution. Now, most of the companies have great controls. Most of the companies buy and spend huge amounts of money with the amazing solutions of my peers and other panelists here. The problem is that these great solutions need some tweaking. They need optimization. And every company is its own. So if we say that ransomware is the new pandemic, so every company is an organism. It's a different way of working and doing stuff and developing. So every company needs its own tweaking of the security controls to adjust the way that it operates. Now, in order to make sure that all of these controls are tweaked and optimized, you need to test. There is no other way. One of the things that we constantly are doing is something that is called the purple teaming, where we work together with the security operation of the company, and we help them, we hit them with the hardest attacks from the side of the employee, from the web, from towards their cloud environments and their infrastructure, and test if the security controls that they have set are finding and detecting and preventing all the things that we do. Now, I'll tell you a little secret. There is no security control which is not bypassable. Hackers like us, this is what we do. This is our fun, to bypass all the greatest security controls and find the 0 days that really do that. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean that this imperfection is bad. The whole concept of cybersecurity is a layered approach, where we have layers and layers of security controls that are working together. When you have a consolidation of these different tools, maybe one tool will not detect the anomaly, and the other tool will do the detection, but the other tool that didn't detect will enable you to investigate the anomaly much faster. And this is why all these tools need to combine and work together. The logging and auditing of systems is very important because it enables you as the CISO, as the security operations center in the organization, to understand when one security control was bypassed, but the other security control was able to catch this. And how do you do that? Only while you test. You need to constantly test your resilience, constantly improve, and this way you can mitigate and stop the next ransomware from happening. And I'm grateful for such a meaningful panel here, because with all the tools that and all the security controls that my other panelists provide, when they work together and they are optimized, there is no attack that can pass through. Okay, and this is the whole meaning of this panel for me. When you take all of this, you test and optimize, there is no way that you get attacked.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for revealing the secret of hackers. But to me, that's not a secret, because hackers will and can really find holes on any software system that you put in place. It's really a matter of making it more difficult for them to compromise you, so that just avoid being the lowest hanging fruit among companies. All right. Okay, Sam, can I get your input?
Thank you, Dan. I'm glad that Alex is an ethical hacker in a way, right? So that's he doesn't come after the bed. He's like, look, I think we've touched on a lot of things here, and if I can just sort of try to wrap up a little bit around what we've all said. We see, and I'll relate this, is, if we take the physical situation that we all been going through with the pandemic today and our digital situation, when someone has got symptoms, we test. I've heard from the guys that you have to test, and we've got to continue to test. That's how you know where things are. That's where you get your visibility. That's where you get your issues. Now, we're in the business today that we try to bring organizations to make sure they don't leave their legacy behind, the vulnerable in our old age people, right? A lot of, if we talk to the financial world, there's a lot of ATMs using Windows 7 still. There's XP out there. There's certain things out there, and people tend to, oh, it's legacy. I'll get out there and I'll start working on my 2016 and up type of thing. What happens? The legacy is still a back door there somewhere. So you have to work in stages, and it's true. Like Sir Raymund said, we need to make sure data is protected, but we also need to bring in the human factor and educate our employees about cyber security, and that needs to come from the top down. So there's the people element. There's the there's the tools elements like the Guardicore and all my panelists here, and there is and then you got the strategic element, the Forrester, zero trust. You got the Gartner reports. You got this. You got that. But at the end of the day, you need people to make it happen, and you need the collaboration to come in. So we have to actually come back and practically follow what we're doing today to get through COVID. We need to test. We need to segment. We need to quarantine. We need to look after the vulnerable. We need to make sure everybody is moving with us in the right way. And we're all educated. People weren't going to get vaccinated unless you educate them. Same with cybersecurity. We need to educate people. And that's probably the best way I could leave it at that.
All right. Thank you, Sam. We have about 8 minutes left. Alvin, your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think the measurement hasn't changed much in terms of how we want to do it, but what we do has changed. So like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that has changed is that all of your desktops and laptops has gone out into the working home. And we need to be able to measure that, and we need to be able to measure that with speed as well. The industry probably pivoted to a new type of solution called SASE, and actually is to me it is the next evolution of a VPN network, right? But the issue is this, right? Unlike in the past where your user decides when to power on their computer, and when they power on is inside the office, is inside your perimeter, defended by your perimeter defense. Today, when they decide to power on outside, they may not necessarily still be connected to the SASE or to the VPN. So they are suddenly out there alone in the wild. It's a bit like saying, hey, I have a primary school kid now going out, and all of a sudden they have to study university in a foreign land all by themselves. We are kind of caught in the cold in that fashion. I would say that the way we need to measure has to take that into account. The company's security administrator, the person running this security ops, needs to be able to see all of the endpoints, even when they are not connected to a VPN or to SASE, and still be in control, still be able to do what Sir Raymund said, control what you can control, which is cyber hygiene. And I'd like to say again, to raise the bar there, because when we talk about cyber hygiene, one of the failures that many organizations see is that they thought they had complied 90%, 95%, let's say 98%, but actually they complied 98% of the 95% of assets they see. So the visibility is also another issue. So there's an urgency to get full visibility on all of our assets, measure that to the level that you want, so 98, 99, whatever. And then based on the TTPs that we start to see now, Steve talked a bit about, supply chain and ransomware hitting us a lot more this year. Actually, supply chain hit first, and ransomware is probably 2 or 3 steps behind. The attacker is inside your network. They can do what they want. They can move laterally, and then they trigger the ransomware, right? The fact that they can move laterally is another area that we should pay close attention to. We talk about zero trust, but to me, zero trust, as many organizations understand it, seems like a hammer approach. Let's cocoon up that endpoint in its own network, and that's zero trust. For me, the business still has to work. Therefore, if the endpoint needs to communicate, it still needs to communicate. So when I talk about preventing lateral movement, I'm actually talking about restricting over-permissive credentials, because it is the credentials that allow the hacker to move laterally. So in a study that we did, so some of our customers actually investigated how good is their Active Directory control, and they actually found many domain administrators where they didn't think it exists. And I say it is actually way back, right? AD has come along a long way. We have implemented, we have put in users, we have given permission, but the task to tidy up after that, to take back permission when they no longer needs it, I think there's an urgency to look into that as well.
All right.
So overall measurement in terms of cyber hygiene, that includes the credentials as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Alvin. Steve?
Yeah, I think I really like the way this question's asked, right? How do we measure effectiveness? And I think the key word there is effectiveness. I think compliance and auditing are in a lot of times measuring existence rather than effectiveness, right?
Yes.
Do I have it? Do I have the firewall check? Do I have my antivirus
Right.
check? It's not answering the question, is it effective, right? So how do we measure the effectiveness? And then for that, I think I'll follow on with Sam and Alex and say the answer is to test, right? And maybe let's draw an analogy, right? If I'm making bulletproof vests instead of security infrastructure, how do I want to measure the effectiveness of that bulletproof vest? Yeah, I want it to be compliant, made of the right materials, built the right way, manufactured the right way. But at the end of the day, I want to fire a bullet into that vest and see if it stops it or not. And that's what we mean by test the security infrastructure. And you can do that with red teams. You can do that with purple teams. Those are great ways to do it. There's also new technologies like security validation, which automate it a little bit more. They don't have the human creativity of a red team. So I wouldn't say they replace red teams. They complement red teams in that they can do things a little bit faster, but maybe not as complex as a human red team would. But either way, whether you're using a technology or a service like Red Team or Purple Team, you want to take the real world attacks informed by intelligence, informed by your cyber threat profile and the specific risks that your business faces in your industry and your geography. And you want to play those attacks safely in your environment so that you can see if you can stop them or not. And if you're not doing that, then you're rolling the dice and you're assuming, my defense in depth stack, I've invested so much time, money, and effort, it's just got to work. And that's not a good approach.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Ian, we're almost running out of time, but can you have your answer in 1 minute?
All right, we'll do that. Thanks, Dan. I think testing, I would agree with everyone. Testing is definitely one of the ways for you to measure. But I think for me, organization can measure the effectiveness of their security controls when they have, number one, visibility. It's just one looking, you can see it. Number two, if they can correlate and get analysis of what is happening in the network, they can respond to it and take action immediately. I think that's very important. And I know a lot of things are happening right now. We want, of course, COVID-19 will leave us soon, but the work from home setup is here to stay and will create a lot of disadvantages to the situation and gives us vulnerables, and it weakens the defense system. So that we have to revisit our cybersecurity strategy. From a technology standpoint, people and process. Technology, you have to have the right technology. If you have to have your technology should have can provide you the visibility. They can correlate everything that they see, and it gives you ability to act on it. People, you have to make sure that your people is aware of what is happening and how to handle it, and be the weakest link in our organization. And I think number one for us in Trem Micro, phishing insight is something that we help our customers with. We have that to make sure that people are aware of what is happening, and of course, work from home, social engineering best practice to help our customers. And number three, the process, the last one, make sure playbook. You have to have your own playbook to make sure that everything will be handled. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Thank you, Ian. I actually have a lot of follow-up questions regarding this topic because one of the challenges as a CISO in our company is how do you exactly show how effective your security controls are? Or is there a standard out there that can really say, or you can show to management that, hey, we're 80% out of 100% perfect security posture. So, but anyway, we've run out of time. guys. And I guess this concludes our panel discussions. Very, very interesting insights and questions actually to our panels. And on behalf of our organizers and officers of the ISOG and from this event, we'd like to thank our dear speakers, distinguished speakers and panelists for sharing their insights in this panel discussion. And it's always a great learning opportunity to hear from subject matter experts like yourselves. Thank you. But before I go, I'd like to place a shout out to my security team in PS Bank, whose arms I've twisted to watch this segment. Guys, don't forget to take a screenshot of this segment as proof of your attendance. And secondly, I'd like to send loud greets to my fellow goons in rootcon.org. They are currently bunkered down somewhere in a beautiful resort in Batangas or Tagaytay. We're currently also conducting our famous hacking conference, the RootCon Security Conference, which started yesterday, October 13, and will end tomorrow, October 15. And I hope to see some of you guys there. So that's it. Stay safe, stay secure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
And thank you, ISOG.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sirs.